guys? Welcome back to the Order and Progress podcast. This is your host, Will Safford. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you are enjoying the podcast so far, I just ask that you leave a review on Apple iTunes or like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching the video version of the podcast. And in today's episode, we have Kyle Cerminara on. Kyle is a former Olympic level wrestler. He's a former MMA fighter, and he is Gordon Ryan's current wrestling coach. Kyle has a ton of experience working with combat athletes at the highest level, and himself being one. He wrestled D1. He set a bunch of records in college. He's an All-American wrestler. His wife is actually a pro UFC fighter. And Kyle has just been through it all. He currently trains with the Danaher Death Squad in New York City under John Danaher. And he is the head wrestling coach at Long Island MMA on Long Island. So we're really lucky to talk to Kyle today. He has a really interesting perspective on preparing the body for combat sports. You know, he's got that wrestler mentality, and it was just really interesting understanding the work ethic, the mentality, the mindset, the drive that goes into being an Olympic level wrestler. So he made some really interesting comparisons between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but overall it's all grappling. We were able to dive into some of his experience at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado, and he just gave a lot of valuable insight from all the different things that he has learned over the years, preparing his body, preparing his fighters, his teammates, and people that he works with for competition at the highest level. So I really hope you guys enjoy the episode. Again, you can always check us out at seekprogress.com. On Instagram, we're at seek.progress. We just dropped a free ebook at seekprogress.com. That is a 4-week ramp-up program, conditioning ramp-up program for jiu-jitsu. So the idea is that this program will get your heart, lungs, and body ready for jiu-jitsu training. We've been off the mats for a couple of weeks or months really, due to the pandemic. So this program is designed to get all of your energy systems ready for the mat. So it's a free program, completely free. You just go to seekprogress.com and you'll see it right there on the homepage. It's the 4-week bodyweight ramp up program for jiu-jitsu. So make sure to check that out. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Please, if you can, leave a review on Apple iTunes and like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we'll be sure to keep pumping out these episodes, trying to deliver the best information we can to improve your jiu-jitsu performance. So without further ado, let's get into the next episode with Kyle Cerminara. All right, so welcome back, guys. Today we've got Kyle Cerminara on the show with us. Kyle, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Good. So just so people can understand your background and kind of the experience that you have, can you just tell us, what just your history and your path in combat sports?
Yeah. I'm basically a lifetime wrestler. I started wrestling like most wrestlers as a young kid. I think I was like 10. I started wrestling all throughout high school. And after high school, I wrestled for the University of Buffalo, where I was a Division I All-American. And then after that, I moved out to Colorado Springs. I lived at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. I trained under Terry Brands, who's a national team coach that when I was there. I lived there for 3 years, 2006, 7, and 8. Well, it was basically like 2.5 years, but 6, 7, and 8. And then after that, I got into coaching while I was still competing in wrestling, but I was assistant coach at Edinburgh University. I was there for 2 seasons. Then I took a position as the assistant coach at the University of Pennsylvania down in Philadelphia. And I was there for 2 seasons. And when I was down there, I started getting into fighting a little bit. I took a couple professional fights. I wasn't really even training. I was just like wrestling, but I started liking that a little bit more. And So I gave up my coaching job. I wish that I didn't, but then I moved out to AKA in California and tried to pursue fighting a bit more. I had so many fights fall through. I think I had maybe one or two other fights after I left, and then I kind of stopped fighting and got into the real world or workforce after that. But now I'm the assistant or the wrestling coach and co-owner of Long Island MMA.
That's awesome, man. So you have you've got a deep history with combat sports, and I think it's no secret that wrestlers are some of the toughest, most well-conditioned athletes in combat sports. I mean, that's the reason why many of them are champions in the UFC. Can you explain to us, why do you think it's important to put in the effort off the mat in strength and conditioning and mobility and all that type of stuff to help you? Obviously technique is king, right? But do you think it's worth people's time to put in that effort off the mat to give them that edge while they're fighting?
Yeah, I absolutely do think that it's time, but I'm like a forever student of the sport, so I always like to get different philosophies, and now I train jiu-jitsu under John Danaher, and he doesn't believe that strength and conditioning exists. He says that it's efficient or inefficient. If you're efficient in your techniques, then it appears that you have good strength and conditioning. If you're inefficient in your techniques and movement, then it appears that you don't have good strength and conditioning. And I actually think that there's a lot of truth to that, but I think you have to be super extreme in the techniques. I think you have to be like over the top precise with all of your techniques, and they all have to be cutting edge. And I don't think a lot of people have the access to someone like John Danaher. So to bridge that gap, you need to be strong and in really good shape. In the wrestling world, the cliche is, like an old Gable cliche is, the first period is won by the best wrestler. The second period is won by the wrestler with the most technique, or the strongest. And the third period is won by the wrestler with the most heart. So that's beyond strength and conditioning as well. It's just like guts and heart. So there's a few different schools of thought, but wrestling is always about you could eventually break the person. If you get anyone tired, you could beat them. And I kind of think that that's true in a lot of sports, but at the very highest level, it's not enough. You need to be technical.
Would you say though that if say both guys are extremely technical, but one guy has the edge with strength or cardio, do you think that guy has a better chance of coming out victorious?
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of interesting that Danaher says that, because if you look at Nick Rodriguez, I think he's like the ultimate example of somebody who, I think he's got a lot of natural gifts, right? But he puts in a ton of time in the weight room and uses a lot of explosive power, strength, and his conditioning he took second place at ADCC. That's like the ultimate test, right?
Yeah, he's definitely an anomaly. But it's clear that strength and conditioning is important. Like, no one's more strong and well-conditioned in jiu-jitsu than Gordon. But he's also by far and away the most technical. So it's 100% strength and conditioning is important.
Do you think
you need the technique as well?
Do you think that there's any quality that is that is better than the others? Like, do you think that having more gas in your tank, or just being crazy powerful or crazy strong, one is better than the other?
Well, of course, yeah. It's technique or cardio. Your gas tank is the most important in a combat sport. If you're a power lifter and you need to do a 1 rep max, then conditioning doesn't really matter. You only have to be strong for 1 rep. But anything more than 1 minute, you need the cardio. You could get exhausted in 1 minute very easily if you've ever grappled before, or I mean, I'm not a boxer, so I have no efficient movement in boxing. So if I shadow box for 1 minute, I'll be, really fatigued. My arms will be very tired. So, cardio is king. If you don't have good cardio, the strength doesn't matter.
I agree with that, man. I think a lot of people, I've been doing these interviews and a lot of people focus on the strength. And I think strength is really important. But if you can't last, man, fighting is like, how much can you actually fight? How much can you keep going and fight back? And, don't get me wrong, strength, you gotta be strong. But I really think, if you look at some of the lower weight classes, right? Like the smaller guys, those guys have cardio for days. Maybe they're the ones who need to invest more in the strength training. You and I were bigger. What weight class did you compete in?
I wrestled after college at 96 kilos. In college, I wrestled 197. 96 kilos is like 211. And then I fought 185 and 205. So
okay, so you're basically welterweight, heavyweight. So for guys like us, I mean, a lot of times it comes down to how long can you go? It's like, and how long can you continue to enforce your technique, right? It's not just like you're running a race, like you just who's going to outlast each other. It's like who's going to outlast each other mentally, physically, and enforce their technique, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you need the strength and conditioning, but you also, nobody could go 100% for 15 minutes. Like if you're in an MMA fight, you also need to know, like that's maybe not a technique, but a tactic. You have to know where there's some positions that you can breathe. There's some positions that you can rest, just the body doesn't work. Like you can't run a 100-yard dash for, 26 miles for a marathon pace. There's positions to explode. There's positions to rest. And I think that your training needs to have the same type of variance. There's some real explosive movements, and then there's some like long, slow movements. And, it's like your heart rate's going up, then you bring it back down, then your heart rate goes up, bring it back down. And that's kind of like a fight too. Like when you're on, like you have someone mounted, you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you have someone mounted, you're on top. Maybe that's where you're, catching your breath, recovering a little bit, but you're also like zapping the other guy's energy. So, then you have some energy to finish that squeeze, but you can't be squeezing intense the entire time, no matter how well conditioned you are. You have to have, the right tactics.
So with that said, what are some of the methods that you use in the gym to develop those types of energy systems that you need?
Well, I think that nothing that you can do in the gym can mimic what you can do in live training. I think like if you want to be a fighter, you have to spar, you have to, get live training in, but if you can't spar every single day because, your body just can't take that type of punishment. So I like to do some conditioning things. Like I use the Airdyne bike a lot. That's just something that I think that has a lot of, it's easy to set up workouts. It's easy to like have like matrix on it. Like you have to hit this many miles in this many minutes, or burn this many calories in this many minutes, or keep the RPMs above a certain number of RPMs. So it's easy to set those goals. You can't know. It's hard to just say, all right, start riding or start running. You need a goal in mind, so you know how hard to push it. But so I like the Airdyne bike a lot for conditioning. It doesn't have pounding on your knees like it would, like running does. A bigger guy like me, I think running's a little hard on the body. But so I do a lot of Airdyne workouts. Or when I was an athlete, I was doing a lot of Airdyne workouts. But
the Airdyne is, it's just like a mental thing too, right? It's like you get on that thing and it's just total body, everything's burning, and it's a lot of just like, man, trying to push through and just keep going.
Yeah, I always say that the bike always wins. One of the fighters I work with closely is Gregor Gillespie, and he's very into biking the Airdyne. But even him, the bike always wins. You just set the matrix a little higher, and eventually you'll fail. But there's some interesting workouts you can do with it that we always try to like challenge each other and try to challenge reach certain matrix on it, and it's not easy. Lance Palmer is another. He's a wrestler that I was friends with, but now he's a PFL champion. I've seen him do airline workouts, bike workouts. It's just I've never seen anything like it. But he's another one that's really into those type of workouts.
Just to give people an idea of like what an Airdyne workout might look like, are you talking like would it be like Tabata intervals, or maybe even longer than that, like a minute on, minute off?
Sometimes it'll be like 30-second sprints, then like 20 seconds off, 30-second sprint, 20 seconds off. Sometimes it'll be like that. Then another one that we like to do, we try to get 4 miles in 10 minutes. Oof. So, which was really, really challenging. This on the Schwinn Airdyne, because I've told that to people, and they use one of the road bikes, and they get it easily. The Schwinn's, I can't get it. But so that's another one that we do. But yeah, like the Tabata type intervals are really good, because it's like explode and then you recover, explode and then you recover. And you try to do it like mimicking like the length of a fight or a match. Or you'll use like a 1 minute Airdyne sprint, and then you'll do pads for 1 minute. 1 minute Airdyne sprint, and then mat returns for a minute. And then you do that for 15 minutes. So it's like get yourself exhausted on the bike, then you have to be technical with the skill. So it'd be 1 minute Airdyne sprints, then 1 minute double legs. 1 minute Airdyne sprints, 1 minute mat returns. 1 minute Airdyne sprints, 1 minute leg kicks. And you do that for 15 minutes, like, a fight. Really, it's usually like 50 seconds of work. Then you have 10 seconds to get to the next component. Then, 50 seconds of technique, then back on the bike. And you do that for 15 minutes. But that's a pretty common workout that we do.
Man, that's interesting. That sounds like a very like that type of training comes from a wrestling background. I know they do, like, you see some of these crazy wrestling rooms where they're like carrying each other across the mat, right? They're like pre-exhausting themselves, and then they go and they do technique where they're doing like shots and, just different wrestling techniques. Like, I feel like in jiu-jitsu, that stuff never happens. It
doesn't happen in jiu-jitsu. It definitely doesn't. And I think that it's because jiu-jitsu it's a more technical sport. Wrestling is more like you have to be able to grind it out. Like you have to do technique when you're tired. Jiu-jitsu is almost like, well, don't get that tired. To like conserve your energy. You never hear, like, before you go out in wrestling, they say make yourself get tired. Like if you're tired, then the other guy's exhausted. Like pull on his head until he gets tired. Or in jiu-jitsu, if you grapple like that, I think that it's I don't think people think it's a great idea, because eventually you'll get tired and submitted. But there are athletes that do grapple like that. It looks like Nicky Rod kind of does that.
Yeah.
Just, goes hard enough, but he could go hard enough the whole time. He doesn't really get caught in anything. But it definitely is a different type of conditioning. It's a different type of, I guess, use of energy between the two.
No, that's interesting. We had a guy, Dante Leon, on the podcast the other day, and he was saying that in jiu-jitsu, there's no set program for jiu-jitsu strength and conditioning on the mats. It's just like, okay, you have your technique, and then we do, 5 rounds of 10 minutes, and that's it. There's no like differentiating between like, okay, energy system. Today we're going for, this is when you're in the end of a match, and let's get really tired, and then let's push it for 30 seconds, and you have to do, whatever it is, takedowns or sweeps or something like that. So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I think there could be use there, because if you watch jiu-jitsu matches, a lot of them are won in that last 30 seconds. It's that last sweep when the guy's tired.
Yeah, but I think that culturally, jiu-jitsu, like it's like built upon like a small guy being able to beat a big guy. That's the crux of jiu-jitsu, I think. Where wrestling, I think it's a bit more like you can't give belts in wrestling, I think, based on technique, because there's so many other components. Like you could shoot the most beautiful high crotch and know how to do a Granby and a tilt and everything else. But, if you can't rip off like 30 chin-ups and run a 5-minute mile, you're probably not very good. Like I always think, because I'm a wrestling coach, I always think, I'd like to implement some type of belt system. But if I were to do it, it would have to have some physical components to it. It couldn't just be based on technique, because, you might have like all the whatever black belt techniques in the world, but if you're weak and slow and poorly conditioned, you aren't going to do very good in wrestling. It's just different. It's just a different sport. And I don't know enough. I'm not an expert in jiu-jitsu by any means, but just from what it appears to me that, I mean, I've definitely been submitted by, weak, small people that, in wrestling, they wouldn't score. The wrestling, the weight classes matter much, much more. Right. The 157 pounder cannot beat the 197 pounder. Just cannot happen. And if they're both high level. Where in jiu-jitsu, you'll see, Gary Tonin will beat, the 205 EBI champions, right? He won it. But that can't happen in wrestling. I think jiu-jitsu just is more technical. Wrestling, you need more physicality.
But, you mentioned like running a 5-minute mile for wrestling. Do you think that there is benefit to doing like just slow, or that's not slow, but road work for jiu-jitsu, like steady state cardio?
Probably. But another thing in wrestling, like all the matches, you know exactly how long your match is. In high school, they're 6 minutes. College, they're 7 minutes. International, they're 6 minutes. They're doing 6 and 7 minutes. Jiu-jitsu, every tournament, every rule set, they're totally different. So it's hard to set, like, well, how long should I run for? Because I think like a standard like IBJF match is 5 or 6 minutes, right?
Depends on the belt.
Okay. But some are about that time. But then there's lots of others, like higher level matches, that there's no time limit at all. They'll go on for 2 hours. So how do you train for that? There's no consistency. They just kind of make rule sets up as they go, almost. And it's not bad. They're figuring it out and they're getting viewers and stuff like that. So it's just difficult to train for. In wrestling, it's like, all right, like I do a thing with some of my wrestlers, we call it a 7-minute lift. And you have the bar and you're doing like, exercise every 30 seconds for 7 minutes, but you can't set the bar down. So it's, you're working your grip, your mental, it's 7 minutes, you're not setting the bar down. But you couldn't do that type of workout for jiu-jitsu because you really don't know what type of match you're getting into for the most part. Unless you say, oh, I only compete in this. But the good guys don't do that. The good guys compete in everything.
Yeah. And wrestling is like, when you say 7 minutes, it's also periods that are broken up with.
Right. Exactly.
So if it's a 7-minute match, can you explain like the periods and the rest breaks that you have?
Well, it's a 7-minute match. The first period is 3 minutes. And then the second one, it's not necessarily a rest rate, but the second one, a wrestler gets choice. And they would get the choice to be top, bottom, neutral, or defer it for the third period. And however long that takes, probably 40 seconds. And then they start from whatever position you decided to start from to start the second period. And then the second period is 2 minutes. And then you have the discussion which choice you want. Then it's 2 minutes again. So 3-2-2 would be a 7-minute match.
So yeah, that's just, you could run intervals all day with that type of like pacing.
You can mimic it. Yeah, exactly. Where jiu-jitsu, you can't really mimic it like that. And there's more stops and starts in wrestling because there's an out of bounds that they stop and start. There's stalemates. There's a lot of different stops and starts. With jiu-jitsu, it's just, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I'm not well-versed enough to say the best like training, strength and conditioning procedures for jiu-jitsu. But if you're strong and in good shape, it's going to help you. And then
it's like you're also, okay, so you're taking these rest periods and when you come back, it's like 100%. It's not like jiu-jitsu where, all right, we're going to chill a little bit in this position. Like, you're going hard for the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And every time you step on the mat, it's going to be a grind.
Yeah, wrestling's more of a sprint.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And then in MMA, you've got, 3 5-minute rounds. How long is the rest period in MMA?
1 minute.
So you get one. So even that, you can kind of train that a little bit more precisely.
Oh, yeah. And you know exactly what it is. It's 3 5s or 5 5s, main event.
Now, okay, you've competed in everything. You've done wrestling, you've competed in MMA, and now, I don't know if you've competed in jiu-jitsu, but you've trained with the best guys in the world at at Danaher's, do you find that your conditioning from MMA and wrestling training has transitioned over to jiu-jitsu?
Well, I mean, I'm old now and in not very good shape. So I'm not the same person as I was when I was wrestling and fighting. So no, I get exhausted when I train in jiu-jitsu. But I think just the fact that I could still train at all is because I was a high-level wrestler my entire life, you know. But yeah, so I mean, it's not. I can't really answer that because I'm not the same person as I was, 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I was a high-level wrestler, you know. But the fact that I could kind of go with those guys now is probably because I have a lifetime of, high-level wrestling.
So let's talk about that because I think in your early 30s now, right?
Well, I'm in my late 30s. I'll be 38 in July.
Oh, you're late 30s, but you're still getting on the mats with Gordon Ryan, Nick Rodriguez, Gary Tonin, Craig Jones. What are some of the, like, your training must be different now. Like, what do you do to keep coming back? Do you do anything for recovery, or have you changed how you do things at all?
Well, now I'm a hobbyist, like I don't really have visions of being an ADCC champion, like I coach and I want to coach like, the best guys. But I have 5 other jobs, so mostly I just focus on those things. But so my focus really isn't like recovery and nutrition, like, but I think that if you want to compete at the highest level, recovery, nutrition, sleep, that all has to be like, super, super important. Like when I was an athlete, like that was really, really important to me. Like I knew that you had to sleep and recover and eat right, and do all those things, drink lots of water, take supplements, vitamins, and I did all those things. But now it's like, I compete as more of like a hobbyist. But I think just like you're saying, like how come I'm still able to go with those guys is because I did that for like 15 years, and it's like, ingrained in you a little bit.
Do you do anything to promote like the other side of all this grinding and competing? Do you do anything like yoga or like anything like that?
Now I don't, but I used to. Like when I was trying to fight, I definitely did yoga. When I was at the Olympic Training Center, that was kind of like, it was like 2006, 7, 8. It was when the word like recovery first started like coming out, and they built a recovery center, and they had like saunas, hot tubs, steam rooms, cold splash. There's massage tables, but we would do that almost after every workout. We'd go and like do like, soaks from hot to cold and saunas. But like now you hear about like, how important the sauna is, or, cryogenic therapy. And this was 10 years before that. Yeah. And we were doing it every day, but we just didn't call it like heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins like they do now. For cryotherapy, we just get in like really cold water, then get in really hot water. But all that stuff really works. I mean, it's worked forever. But yeah, I always did that. And it just makes you feel good. Like saunas make you feel good. Cold takes out inflammation.
I've spoken with a few people who have trained at the Olympic Training Center. Adam Wheeler, you familiar with that? Wrestler. And
he was there when I was there.
He was there when you were there?
Yep.
Man, he was just telling me wild stories. Can you just tell us like a little bit what that experience was like training at the Olympic Training Center?
Yeah, like right now, it's a little different now. I don't think there's as many. There's really not established program there as much anymore because they've developed regional training centers, and they're all over. Like the New Jersey RTC is popular. It's where like Pat Downey is training there. Reese Humphrey's the coach there, and they're doing a really good job. And then like the Ohio RTC has one, Oklahoma has one, the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. Now all the best guys are at throughout the country at like colleges, and they do a regional training center, and it's really good. But when I was wrestling, all the best guys lived in Colorado for the most part. So we had a room of like 30 guys, and it was all like, the top, you had top 5 guys at each weight class. And it was just like really hard training. And we'd go like twice a day and we'd do like crazy strength and conditioning workouts. We were probably overtrained. Like one thing that we used to do all the time was like the cog railroad. It's like a mountain straight up and there's railroad ties into it. It starts at like almost 6,000 feet. So it goes up, to like 11,000 feet because it's a mile straight up, well, 10,000 feet. But, so you're going up there with no oxygen. We would do that all the time. And it would take, it takes me like, some people would get up, like Henry Cejudo would get up in like 25 minutes. It would take me like 40 minutes, and you're like just dying for like 40 minutes or even 25 minutes to compete in a 6-minute match. Like I never really understood that. I thought it was a little excessive, but we do it all the time. But I think in wrestling, it's not always physical. Like that's an exercise of the mind, right? You would never have to grind for 25 minutes in freestyle wrestling. It's an explosive sport, but that was to train your mind. And that's a big part of wrestling. We would do hour-long grind matches, like in a match with one guy for an hour. Or first person to score 100 points. Like those aren't mimicking your workout, So maybe those are like antiquated workouts. I don't know that they still do stuff like that, but it makes your mind hard. And I think that, in balance without, I hate the word overtraining, but without, damaging your body, those are really important workouts.
Gotcha. But you still had some of those you had that recovery center. So it's you guys are crushing yourselves, but also getting a little bit of benefit from all the recovery stuff they had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's awesome. So wrapping this up, last final questions. Any supplements that come to mind that you like when you were training back in the day that, you really liked, and anything now that you're
I still take supplements. I think supplements are important because for me, it's hard to get all the stuff that you're supposed to get through just regular eating. It's hard to prep all that stuff. So I think protein should be taken every day with, after your workouts. Just a simple like whey protein. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but like just the protein shake is really important. If you're trying to like build strength, creatine is proven to help with strength performance. Drinking lots of water is important with that. Amino acids, that's another thing that I still take. And then I like to take like a green shake too, just because I don't really eat a lot of vegetables. So I think just a green shake is important too. Like it doesn't matter what brand, but make sure you're getting some like green leafy vegetables and stuff. It's hard to eat a lot of that, so I take that like a supplement. And then and now I take like turmeric and cucumber. I forgot how to say that word, but for like inflammation, anything that alleviates inflammation is really important, especially as you get older.
Do you think that like if they had the training methods that they're using now, back when you were in your competition days, do you think that would have changed anything for you?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, because, I mean, like hard training is hard training, regardless.
Wrestling hasn't changed a whole lot. I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think it has. Granted, I'm not at the very top what the very, very best guys are doing, but wrestling's hard work. Yeah. People are still working hard. Kyle Dake is like way ahead of the curve doing all types of super scientific things, but he's still, wrestling hard. He's still sprinting hard. I guarantee it. I don't know what he's doing every day, and he's doing some real scientific stuff, but wrestling is always going to be about hard training.
Right on, man. Final piece of advice you would give to a grappler?
I think try to approach it with like John's approach of technique. Being efficient or inefficient is the most important thing. The better your technique is, the better you're going to do. Have an answer to every counter, have a counter to every recounter. Then that's like the idealistic situation, I think. if you could have that type of technique where you're so much better than everyone else that you don't even get tired, that should be the goal. But understand that it's probably an unrealistic goal, especially, you might not be training under John. You might, have someone who doesn't even know all the techniques. So you have to augment that technique with strength and conditioning and, flexibility and things that can kind of, counterbalance technical problems.
I get what you're saying. I mean, technique is king, right? So make that your focus, but you can supplement maybe your deficits of technique with good cardio, good strength and conditioning, good mobility, all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
Man, how can if people wanted to train with you or find out more about you, where can they go?
Prior to this shutdown, I was pretty active on social media with I always post wrestling techniques. I post on my stories of drills and stuff that my athletes are doing, my kids. And people seem to like that. But my Instagram is Kai Cerm, KY at KYCERM. But that's pretty much the best way to find me.
And you have an instructional wrestling video on.
Oh yeah, I have an instructional wrestling video at Fanatics Wrestling, BJJ Fanatics. I go over the seatbelt position, which I feel is the best takedown situation in all forms of grappling. And once you watch that DVD, you'll see that those situations come up almost in every fight, match, grappling fight. They come up constantly.
Then when I think seatbelt, I think from back control, it's like one over hook from the back and one under hook. But that's not.
Oh yeah, that's a problem for me. We'll call it a deep, tight waist or a single arm tight waist where you're attacking a single leg, they get it back, and you go to the far hip around the back. In wrestling, it's called a seatbelt. But I struggled with the name on that. But the position that's covered on that DVD comes up in every match.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. That was a lot of great info. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Good luck with the podcast. Stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. Talk to you.
All right, guys, there you have it. As you can see, Kyle has an interesting perspective on jiu-jitsu and strength and conditioning coming from the wrestling background. It really sounds like, to be a wrestler, it's your conditioning and your strength and your everything about your physical performance needs to be top notch. As jiu-jitsu athletes, we can kind of get away with, inferior conditioning and strength. But you have to make up for that with the technique. So I really believe that if you have a combination of the two, technique, strength, conditioning, you're going to be unstoppable. But pretty wild stuff to hear what they did at the Olympic Training Center, referring to him and Henry Cejudo. Kyle has trained and competed with some of the best wrestlers on the planet. So really, really enjoyable conversation with Kyle. If you want to train with him, you can actually go to Long Island MMA. It's in Farmingdale, Long Island. And you can also check out some of his products. He's got a wrestling product on BJJ Fanatics. And if you want to check him out on Instagram, he is at KYCERM. So thanks again for listening to the Order in Progress podcast. As always, please like and subscribe on YouTube. And you can always check us out at seekprogress.com. We've got a bunch of free resources for you there. So really hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next episode.